What happens to a country when the last eyewitnesses die and no one can say anymore? I was there. I saw it. What happens to us when stories like that of Margot Friedländer simply drown in the noise of everyday life? When we click away when it gets uncomfortable. When we think, that was all a long time ago. It has nothing to do with me. This video matters because it is about one simple but terrifying word: forgetting. If we ignore Margot's path, everything she learned about hatred, dehumanization, and second chances will disappear. And then we will repeat the same mistakes much more easily, only in a different form, with different slogans, but with the same coldness in our hearts. Picture a very old woman, over 100 years old. She is standing in front of a Berlin school, holding onto the railing, taking a deep breath. In her handbag lies an old amber necklace and a small note with a single sentence her mother left her before the deportation. Try to make a life for yourself. She could not keep anything else of her family. No farewell gathering, no grave, only these words. Today, Margot Friedländer is no longer with us. But in this story, we bring her back once more. We walk through Berlin with her, from childhood in a lively Jewish family, through persecution, going into hiding in Theresienstadt, into American exile, and then, decades later, back to the city that once cast her out. And in the end, you will have to decide for yourself, what do I do with this memory? Margot was born in Berlin in 1921 as Annie Margot Bendheim. Her father is a proud war veteran, and for a long time he believes that Germany will get back on its feet. The family owns a small button factory, supplying fashion studios, and life takes place between Kreuzberg, school, and dreams. Margot is a curious child. She loves colors, fabrics, fashion. She wants to draw, design, live a completely normal life. Then 1933 comes. She is 11 when the Nazis come to power. In the beginning, it is mostly voices and flags, slogans in the streets, posters, new rules at school. Friends turn away. Teachers who used to be kind suddenly become cold, distant. One rule after another pushes Margot's family further to the edge. Jews not wanted. Only for Aryans. She lives through the November pogroms of 1938. Smashed shop windows, synagogues in flames, men in uniform laughing while glass crunches on the streets. For the Jewish community, it is clear, this is no longer about insults. It is about their lives. Her mother tries to get papers, wants to emigrate. To the USA, anywhere, just away. But it does not work. Deadlines expire. Visas are refused, borders close. Margot trains in a dressmaker's studio, then forced labor in a factory. Bit by bit, normality disappears. She is no longer allowed to go to the cinema, no longer to the park, no longer into many shops. Her everyday life shrinks to a few permitted routes and a constant fear of being checked. The family is falling apart. The father is no longer with them, and Margot lives with her mother and her younger brother Ralph in a small apartment. They cling to each other. 3 people against a system that wants to destroy them step by step. In January 1943 comes the day when everything is finally torn apart. Margot comes home and sees a man in the stairwell from afar. He is standing in front of the apartment door, watching. Margot understands at once. That is the Gestapo. She hides the yellow star and goes further up to a neighbor. There she learns. Her 17-year-old brother Ralph has been arrested, the apartment searched. Her mother is not at home at that moment. She flees to friends, a Jewish couple who take her in. Then she makes a decision that is almost impossible to grasp. She goes to the Gestapo and turns herself involuntarily so she can be with her son, hoping that somehow she can help him. Later, Margot receives her mother's handbag from those friends. Inside are an amber necklace, an address book, and the last words that will shape her life. Try to make a life for yourself. No long explanation, no instructions, just that sentence. Shortly afterwards, her mother and her brother are deported to Auschwitz. At that time, Margot does not know what Auschwitz really means. She hopes. She clings to the idea that somehow they might survive. Only decades later will she learn that they were murdered there. For Margot, a different life begins now. A life in the shadows, underground. She goes into hiding in Berlin, the city she has known since childhood, which has turned into a dangerous place. She keeps changing apartments, sleeps on sofas, in makeshift beds, often with a packed bag beside her. To avoid being recognized, she dyes her hair red. She takes off the Star of David and instead wears a small cross on a chain. A doctor alters her nose so that she will look less Jewish. 16 people who hardly know her or do not know her at all risk their own lives to hide her for a time. They are what she will later call silent heroes. Imagine being in your early 20s and your days consisting of breathing as inconspicuously as possible. Not laughing loudly, not attracting attention. At any moment someone can say, "Papers, please." At any moment the door can burst open. Margot tries to be invisible. But in April 1944, it is over. She is leaving an air raid shelter after a bombing raid when two policemen stop her. "Your papers." She has forged documents, but something is wrong. She is taken away, interrogated, and at one point she says, "I am Jewish." With that, her fate is sealed. She is arrested and deported to Theresienstadt, the camp the Nazis like to present as a model ghetto, but which in reality is a place between life and death. On the train, she sits packed tightly together with others, the smell of fear and of bodies that have not been properly washed for days. No one knows what lies ahead. No one knows whether this journey is the end or just the beginning of a slower dying. Theresienstadt is overcrowded. Too little food, disease, exhaustion everywhere. People who were once teachers, musicians, doctors stand in line for hours for a thin soup. Margot later describes it as a borderland between life and death. She survives only because the war is nearing its end. She witnesses emaciated prisoners arriving from Auschwitz, hardly recognizable as human beings, in striped uniforms, with empty eyes. "You could hardly tell the living from the dead," she says later. In this inferno, she meets Adolf Friedländer again, a man she knows from the Jewish Kulturbund in Berlin. Out of acquaintances, they become partners in survival. They talk about the past, about what once was, and sometimes, very quietly, about what might still come. On May 5th, 1945, the SS men leave the camp. The war is practically lost. On May 8th, Soviet troops take control. There is no great celebration among the prisoners. Many are too exhausted, too shocked to grasp that they are still alive. Shortly after the liberation, Adolf proposes to her, right there in Theresienstadt. Margot will later say, "I was not in love. We first had to become human again. But the shared pain and the shared survival bind them more strongly than any romantic love story." They marry in June 1945, in the middle of the ruins of Europe. After that come months in a displaced persons camp in Deggendorf. The question hangs in the air, where now? Back to Berlin, a city full of memories and perpetrators. Or to another country, another life. Margot and Adolf choose America. For them, the USA are a promise, a place where no one asks if they are Jewish in order to destroy them. In 1946, they leave Europe and move to New York. In Queens, they start a new life. Margot works as a seamstress, later as a travel agent. She learns English, gets used to different food, different streets, the noise of the subway. But deep inside she feels she is living in exile. Not because New York is bad, but because her heart clings to the city that took everything from her. She and Adolf swear to each other, never again Germany, never again that country, never again that language in their everyday lives. The past is packed into boxes. Photos, documents, memories, everything lies stored somewhere. They hardly speak about what happened. Like many survivors, they believe that you can go on living if you simply do not talk about it. Years turn into decades. Germany changes. The wall is built and torn down again. New generations grow up who know about the crimes of the past only from books. Margot and Adolf grow old. Their life in New York is quiet, almost unspectacular. In 1997, Adolf dies. For the first time in many years, Margot is truly alone. The silence in the apartment in Queens is different from before. It is no longer the shared silence of two people, but an echo that keeps asking, "And what about you? What about your life?" In her 70s, she decides to do something that surprises even her. She signs up for a writing course at the 92nd Street Y in Manhattan. There she begins to write down her story. As soon as she puts pen to paper, memories come flooding back that she has suppressed for decades. The man in the stairwell, her mother's handbag, the sentence, "Try to make a life for yourself." The red hair, the cross, the air raid shelter. Theresienstadt. She realizes everything is still there. Not gone, just buried deep. And now, in old age, it pushes to the surface. A German documentary filmmaker, Thomas Haleksinski, becomes aware of her. He wants to make a film about her. To do that, she has to return to Berlin, back to the city she had sworn never to set foot in again. Can you imagine that inner tension? For almost 60 years, you keep your distance from a place because it stands for betrayal, loss, and pain. And then someone comes and says, "Come back. Tell your story. Show me where it all happened." Margot finally says yes. In 2003, she travels to Berlin again for the first time. She walks through Kreuzberg, the streets of her earlier life. Many buildings look different. Others have remained. But she remembers every house, every corner. Here was our living room window. Here I ate ice cream as a girl. Here I picked Ralph up from school. She visits the house where her family lived. Imagine yourself, in your late 80s, standing in front of the door of your childhood, while around you young people hurry past with smartphones, backpacks, headphones. For them it is just another Berlin address. For you, it is the place where everything you loved was torn apart. This journey changes her. She realizes that she is not only a victim, but a witness. Someone who can tell how it was, when no one is left who can say, "I remember," from their own experience. She begins to travel to Berlin again and again. She writes her autobiography, which appears in 2008. Try to make a life for yourself. The title is her mother's legacy, but also a call to the young people of today. In 2010, she makes a decision that surprises many. She returns to Berlin for good. At 88, she moves from New York back to the city of her birth. Why? Why go back to the land of the perpetrators, to the language of commands and interrogations, to the city that made her a second-class Jew and then a hunted person? Her answer is simple and radical at the same time. I belong here, and today I can do something against forgetting. She takes German citizenship again. She receives awards, honors, the Federal Cross of Merit. Berlin makes her an honorary citizen. There is a prize that bears her name and supports projects by young people against anti-Semitism. But for her, the most important thing is not the medals. The most important thing is the students. Margot travels to schools, vocational schools, high schools, to large halls and small classrooms. She stands in front of young people who are often younger than her brother was when he was arrested. Many of them know National Socialism only as a chapter in a history book, as dates, as exam material. She often begins with the same sentences: "You are not guilty, but you are responsible." She speaks without pathos, in clear images. Of the child in the button factory family. Of the friend who suddenly no longer greets her. Of the teacher who humiliates her in front of a class. Of the day the star has to be sewn on. Of the neighbors who look away when the Gestapo comes. She talks about going into hiding, the nightly walks through bombed-out streets, the constant pounding of her heart at every knock on the door. About those who helped her, ordinary people who knew they were breaking the law and did it anyway. And she talks about their Theresienstadt, without turning the cruelty into bloody spectacle, but in such a way that no one in the classroom keeps scrolling on their phone. Some students cry, others cautiously raise their hands. Have you forgiven the Germans? Did you never want revenge? Are you afraid of what is happening again today? She listens, answers every question. She says that she does not think in categories of guilty and innocent when it comes to young people. You are not guilty of what happened back then, but you are responsible for what happens today and tomorrow. She looks very closely when she sees current developments. When people at demonstrations against COVID measures wear yellow stars that say unvaccinated, she is horrified. For her, this is not a provocation, but a mockery of what happened back then. She speaks about it publicly, criticizes this instrumentalization of the victims. Despite everything, her message is not hatred, but humanity. She keeps saying, "Be human." This sentence is so simple that you almost stumble over it. But from the mouth of a woman who has seen where dehumanization leads, it is a clear warning. At 100, she is still sitting on stages, giving interviews, going to parliaments, speaking in the European Parliament on Holocaust Remembrance Day. She becomes a voice that almost no one in Germany does not know. A small woman, often in colorful scarves, with clear eyes that no longer need to see, yet still see everything. At the same time, she remains what she always was, a Berliner. She says, "I love Berlin," not because she forgets what happened, but because she believes that a place can change when people change. You might ask yourself, what does all this have to do with me? I did not deport anyone. I was not there. I did not wave swastika flags. Why should I feel responsible? This is exactly where the core of Margot's life story after the war begins. She shows that responsibility does not have to have anything to do with personal guilt. Responsibility means, I pay attention when people are excluded today. I listen when words dehumanize again. I speak up when minorities are declared the problem. She did not get her life back. Her mother, her brother, her father, they were all murdered in Auschwitz. There is no happy end in a classic sense. But there is something else. A woman who decides to turn her mother's last sentence into her life's task. Try to make a life for yourself. For her, that does not mean, forget what happened. It means, do not let yourself be destroyed. Turn your broken life into a sign that hatred does not have the last word. At 102, she appears on the cover of German Vogue, smiling into the camera and at the same time warning of growing anti-Semitism and right-wing extremism. She lets herself be celebrated, but uses every stage to say, look closely, learn from what happened. In 2025, Margot Friedländer dies in Berlin at the age of 103, in the city where she was born, in the city from which she was driven out, in the city to which she returned to tell her story. What remains of a life that knows so many breaks, losses, changes of place? A few books, a prize that bears her name, videos of her speeches, and above all, memories in the minds of the people who listened to her. Today you are one of those people. You may not know every date, not every place name, but you have had her voice in your head for a few minutes now. The question is, what will you do with it? When someone is dehumanized in your presence, will you stay silent or say something? Will you let hateful jokes pass because it was just a joke? Will you look away when others are excluded? Or will you remember an old woman who returned to the land of the perpetrators after 60 years to tell young people, you are not guilty, but you are responsible? Maybe that is the real purpose of this video. Not that you just think, how tragic, but that you ask yourself, what does it look like if I am human today? What does it mean for me to make a life for myself? And at the same time, make sure that others do not lose theirs. The story of Margot Friedländer does not end with her death. It does not end with this video either. It continues wherever someone decides to look, to contradict, to help. The past cannot be changed. But what you say, think, and do from tomorrow on can. Try to make a life for yourself. And do not forget those who lost theirs. Are you ready to accept the responsibility she has placed in your hands without a word?